creating a body of work. And we are live, and
Okay.
Melanie Sumner, and this is Harrowings, the podcast. We're going to be talking a little bit about Melanie's life course and see what we can till up out of the surface of things, because I just can see only the surface of things. I was talking before we started here live about being in Pittsburgh for a while, and that's Andy Warhol's neighborhood too. And he said, I'm deeply superficial. So, yeah, let's dig in a little bit. I noticed that you've been in Senegal, you've done some writing. What's the most recent thing that you've published?
Well, and I have whined about this a little bit on my Substack, Hag Life. I spent, I've published 4 novels, but this last one, the 5th one, it's not published, but I spent like 15 years on it, mostly revising over and over again. And so I sent it to my agent, and I had kind of my writing career got rocky. I left George Burchard, which I never should have done. I went with a young agent,
Mm.
and um, we just she kept helping me revise the novel, and then she dumped me. Well, after I sat through 2 pregnancies with her, but she dumped me, and I
Oh,
went back to George Burchard, who is I don't know if you know who that is or not, but he's probably almost 100 now.
wow.
And he escaped Nazi Germany,
That's
and came to the United States, and all of his family, were gone, and he started up his own agency out of his apartment, and now he's a pretty big agent. But now his daughter is running it, and she said, "Yeah, I want to see your novel." And I was like, "Oh wow, another rebirth!" And
oh, wonderful. Yeah.
so I spent a year. I left my job as a professor of creative writing in an MFA program at Kennesaw State University in Georgia, and I was out in New Mexico here in Taos, and I spent a year revising it. And the agency helped me a lot with the editing, and it's gone through 2 rounds. And we get some nice comments on it. And there was one editor, and he said, "Oh, she's really big. And she really promotes her writers, and she wants to talk to you." And so we had a Zoom call, and she wanted me to change the book so much. Like, she said, "I just want to have a good feeling when I finish it." I had a good feeling when I finished it, but I was trying to write something kind of noir, and it's a murder mystery. And
Interesting.
she wanted it to be more of a love story at the end, and she wanted to take out, the child abuse, the homophobia,
Hmm.
and the woman is going to end up like staying married to this asshole, and he's not going to be an asshole anymore. And I was like, "No, he's an asshole."
That's the
It
key
turns out.
factor.
So, I mean, it was a tough decision because, I really need to publish again.
Mhm.
It's hard to publish these days.
I I don't know much about that, so tell me more about the publishing process. I'd be fascinated.
Well, it used,
Public readers.
we just keep hearing people aren't reading anymore,
Ah.
and people aren't buying print books. So,
Hmm.
publishers are in it to make money. I mean, and um, back in the days of Thomas Wolfe, you can't uh, look homeward, Angel. You had this publisher, the publisher who published F. Scott Fitzgerald and Hemingway, and he's accused of rewriting or over editing Thomas Wolfe's books. But I mean, his books would be like 8,000 pages, handwritten. They just needed. But they became friends. And they were just engaged, and that doesn't really happen anymore. It's now like it's about money, and there are the 5 big houses, and they want to sell, and a lot of it depends on Goodreads. Like, do people on Goodreads talk about this book? Do they like it? I mean, it's tough. It's a tough world,
Well, so we'll work the network, and we'll get those people to get onto Goodreads and look at your work, um,
right?
and, pump it up. I think that is true that the network effects, we're really dependent on them these days.
Right, and, yeah, everything is, sometimes I've heard writer friends say, the agent or the publisher wants me to have 20,000 followers before she'll look at my work. And you're like, "Well, I'm just not that into social media," and, like, how can you do that and write? And you talk about, harrowings getting under the surface. I mean, social media is surface.
It is, and like I said about being deeply superficial, I only see the surface of things. I never see anything much deeper than the surface, and then I project onto that, and I think I'm digging into it. But what you're talking about now, it brings me back to some friends of mine who were, yeah, I mentioned being in Pittsburgh and teaching as adjunct faculty. You were teaching at Kennesaw,
Yes,
Georgia,
Kennesaw State. Yeah,
and you left that behind to
I
really
did. I
on the
did.
book.
I was a full tenured professor. I left my money behind, which is really scary. I said, I'm gonna have faith in myself as a writer because I'm 62
Got it.
and I did this a year ago and it was like, well, my brain is just it's eroding. I can't remember things and I need my brain. I'm selling my brain for teaching, which I was very tired of after like 30 years. And
Right, that will drain
so,
you.
yeah,
I
right?
had a lot of fun doing it and looking back on it, but at the time, I think, particularly when I was teaching at Carnegie Mellon University, you mentioned that briefly,
Yeah,
the students there were very demanding. They expected a lot out of me, and I've had other friends, one who was teaching at Drexel, did both, Italian, French, and cinema and Spanish, um, and she was just being drained completely, and her earnings were going up slightly, but her the cost of living in Philadelphia was going like this or like that, and so she was actually going down in terms of buying power, and she realized
right.
she had to leave it behind, and she moved to Ireland. And she's got her own
Yeah.
company now doing, fashion,
Oh,
from her
really?
photography. Yeah,
Yeah.
putting her pictures onto clothing and, managing that, and I was like, "That takes some guts to leave behind a career, that you trained for years,
Right.
since childhood,
Right.
basically, to become a professor of Italian, French cinema, all this.
Right. And
You
it's
just
like,
walk away from."
yeah. Teaching, I'm sure the
Mhm.
in person, which I had been teaching online even when I lived in Georgia for 20 years.
I see.
And it was fun at first, designing websites and stuff was a lot of fun. But,
Yes.
it was not as empowering as teaching face to face. And that energy that there's a synergy between you and the students in the classroom it's exhausting, but it's also like it's uplifting.
Yes,
That's a
it
lot of
really
fun.
like I said, I've had fun doing it. I
Yeah.
apparently had a knack for it. I didn't realize I did.
Oh, I'm sure you would, yeah.
And one of the things was I was teaching German as a teaching assistant initially, coming to the university, and basically that was how we earned our keep while we were getting a free ride to do our master's program, and I our professors, I guess, were condescending to teach us while, basically using us for cannon fodder with the undergraduates,
Right,
and
yes, cannon
last
fodder.
we went on Indo-European folk tales, which was the real moneymaker for the German department because it had like 160 students consistently taught in
Yeah,
auditorium kind of thing. Um, and it is a fascinating profession, but then writing, is and publish or perish was there as well, that pressure on the professors.
right, yeah,
And, would they be read? I mean, a lot of academic kind of writing isn't read much. I mean, they'll make
right.
populate every library in the country. Maybe that's how they make their money, I don't know. But, yeah, it has
But
changed
the
a lot.
teaching profession has changed too. I
And now
mean, like
online. Yeah, I wasn't teaching online. I was since
yeah,
1994 to 1997. 1999 was the last time I taught that spring semester. So, yeah, and one of the things I was talking to you a little bit about that uh, particular teaching experience, getting back to the writer's life and particularly writing a novel that takes forever. That
right.
was the theme of a film that I had to give up my classroom for at Carnegie Mellon for the first shot, which was Michael Douglas and Tobey Maguire and Katie Holmes in a creative writing course that Michael Douglas's character was supposedly teaching. It was a novel that was being made into a film. It was written by Michael Chabon. Have you heard of him?
Yes, yeah.
You know him? Okay. And it was called Wonder Boys. And
Oh, yeah, I
it
know,
was
I've heard.
focused on that thing is right after that opening scene, he's going to the airport to pick up his editor. And you were just talking about your relationship with your editor,
Yeah, yeah.
well, how much they wanted out of you. And of course, did you see the film or know the novel?
No, but I want to.
The
Tell me the
point
name
is
of it.
that, the novel itself that he was working on was on page and they show this as he's putting the number on the page of single-spaced typewriter stuff, 2611. He knew the ending was there, but he couldn't quite get there, right, on this,
Right, right,
and his
yeah.
editor was putting a lot of pressure on him because he had gotten a good novel out called Arsonist's Daughter, and, there was this the whole thing centers around a weekend in which they're having Word Fest at the university he's teaching at.
I wanna see this. What's the name of the movie again?
Again, Wonder Boys.
Oh, that's okay, made from the
Bob
one
Dylan
book.
won an Oscar for it
Oh,
and used
okay,
to
I
put
gotta
his
see it.
Oscar on the stage just about every show
Oh,
because of
cool.
the song "Things Have Changed." And I don't know if you would know that song, but it basically says, that he's a worried man with a worried mind, nothing in front of him and nothing behind. And then he goes on to say, "I used to care, but things have changed."
Ah, yes,
What
things have okay,
really
yeah,
dark thing. It came out right around the time that he had put out an album that was sort of a comeback for him called, Time Out of Mind. Happened just after Jerry Garcia died, and Bob had survived recently, like a pericardial infection on his heart, that had almost taken him out. In fact, coming out of the hospital, people ask him, "So, Bob, do you have any experiences there?" He said, "Well, I just thought I'd be seeing Elvis real soon." That's probably my second favorite Bob Dylan quote. The other one was when he was introduced to Peter Grant at a party, and Peter said to him, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Dylan. I manage Led Zeppelin." And Bob just said, "I don't come to you with my problems, do I?"
That's a great comeback. That's
Yeah, it
great.
is a great comeback. But what was great about the film, besides the soundtrack, which included Old Man by, Neil Young, was his older professor teaching his students being precocious and gifted. Tobey Maguire
Right.
had that, and the editor is Robert Downey Jr. So if you're a fan of Robert Downey Jr., you got a good cast going right there. Frances,
Yeah.
McDormand, I think her name is?
I love her. She is
Yeah.
actually, I think, my
She
favorite
plays this love
actress.
interest,
Oh,
Chancellor he's
I
having an
loved
affair
her.
with.
Yeah.
So the whole thing revolves around this one weekend in which his life basically is just coming crashing down around his ears, and it's based on an actual novelist who taught, Michael Chabon at Pittsburgh, and that was, Chuck Kinder. And I don't tell him my story so much, I don't there's just a little bit more to it. I met Chuck at the memorial service for my AA grant sponsor, Louis Buddy Norden, who was also a creative writing professor that Chuck had hired after Michael Chabon had graduated already, and they used to punk Ray Carver. Raymond Carver was, very tight with Chuck Kinder, and the never-ending novel that forms the backdrops of this, movie is a novel he wrote about his relationship with Raymond Carver and never could seem to finish. Although after the film came out, he did get it cut down by an editor with an editor to about a reasonable length, about 300 pages or something, I guess it
Yeah.
is. And it's called Honeymooners: A Cautionary Tale.
Huh. Because I love Raymond Carver too. I
Now, Carver
discovered
was a great writer, right?
yeah, I discovered him in college, and, he's one of my huge inspiration I mean, just thrilled. You know, when you just read a writer and you're especially when you're young for the first time and you're like, "Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh." Yeah.
Yeah, people say that about Buddy too, that his writing is kind of a guilty secret. Have you ever heard of
Yeah.
Lewis Gordon?
No.
No. You might not, but he wrote a novel called Wolf Whistle that was a big hit, and that was about the murder of Emmett Till, because Buddy had grown up in Itta Mississippi, and let's turn to your growing up and your understanding of southern towns
Oh, yeah.
maybe, because that's where he was coming from. He was coming out of Itta Mississippi, where because Emmett Till had wolf whistled a, white woman, he was murdered by these
I remember this story. Yeah, not
in the
yeah,
'50s, right? And
right.
Buddy was his teenager then, about the same age as Till had been.
Yeah.
And he carried that story knowing the murderers personally,
Wow.
who got
Yeah,
off, which was
yeah.
kinda shocking in itself. He was living with that dark shadow in that, Mississippi Delta kinda,
Yeah, yeah.
and I think it's a beautiful story. I don't wanna go into a lot more detail because this is about you and not me. But he did write his memoir. It was called Boy with Loaded Gun.
Huh.
I highly
Okay.
recommend that one too because it's just like he was known as the clown prince of Southern literature.
Oh, okay, cool.
during that time. And he, like I said, taught creative writing at Pitt as well. And when he had his memorial service, Chuck Kender got up there and introduced himself. He'd had a stroke by that time, Chuck had. Introduced himself as what's left of Chuck Kender. And then went
That's
on to
great.
tell the story about punking Raymond Carver from his office with Buddy as Raymond was giving him feedback on Buddy's writing. And how that story is all written up in Harrowing somewhere. Anyhow,
Oh, cool. Okay.
um, yeah, it was funny. And it
You'll
was
have to
shocking to me because I was reading a short story volume by Raymond Carver with no knowledge of this connection at all as I had flown into Pittsburgh to go to Buddy's memorial service from DC.
Oh, really? That's a
Yeah.
yeah,
Totally.
coincidence, yeah.
It was like spooky synchronicity.
Yeah.
So, back to you. You were actually at 7, you moved to Rome, Georgia, so you got immersed in that kinda culture and then
Yes,
other
yeah,
things
I
going on?
was, and my family was Southern, they were Appalachian really, from Kentucky, and,
Hmm.
from people who they were the first people, in their families to ever to leave Kentucky. I mean, I think our family goes way back, like, to Virginia and the plantations and all that, but the
Mhm.
Kentucky people, I mean, they're tough. Yeah, and so but then I grew up in a little town in Georgia, and, oh, yes, yeah, Virginia, yes.
This is my father's book on Virginia from 1973.
Yeah. Yeah, oh,
So,
yeah,
yeah, I got that too. Go ahead.
I know, yeah, so but, yeah, I mean, but the thing about the South, I mean, I love being from the South, I do not wanna live in the South, but, it's the storytelling traditions are just so powerful. People communicate in stories.
Right.
Yeah, like, you've just told me, like, 7 stories.
Probably. And I've got some more, my god. I mean, I was just telling somebody this morning the story of my mother growing up in, Cresswell, North Carolina in, like, 18th century conditions in the 1940s.
How's that?
Well, they didn't have running water.
Really?
They
Yeah.
cooked with a wood stove.
Right, yeah, my grandmother
Grandfather
had
farmed with mules in the '40s.
oh, yeah. Oh, wow, yeah. My mother, wrote an essay for General Electric when she was a teenager and won a refrigerator for her mother. So they always had a spring house, and that was their first refrigerator.
Yeah. My
Yeah,
grandfather ran Gill Electrical Company in Orange, Virginia, right when electrification was starting, and people didn't know
yeah.
where to put their refrigerators.
Huh. I hadn't thought of that, but
Sure,
yeah.
it goes in the kitchen.
Right?
So that was
Yeah.
interesting when they
So,
delivered.
yeah, I had a glimpse of that life, what a spring house was
Right?
and how, like, jars and jars of canned vegetables in there, and it's a dark, like, this small building built of stone,
Yep.
and there's a big hole in the middle of the floor, and that's where the spring is, and it's cold in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You can actually have ice delivered to keep it cooler.
Oh, I have heard of that. Yeah, I don't think
You
yeah,
didn't experience that though?
they didn't have ice.
Huh.
But they did have this big house heated all by wood stoves, and you'd have to get up in the middle of the night and put more wood on, and it's a different world.
It is a different world. Does that figure into your novels at all? Did you end up writing those stories?
Um, I yes, I have written about that. I wrote a novel, it's actually my best-selling novel, The School of Beauty and Charm, and it's pretty autobiographical, and in it, the protagonist, a young Melanie, they go to visit the family on the farm in Kentucky, and it's there's a it's just it's such a different world, and she's a teenager who's kind of in love with her English teacher, and so there's this sort of sexual undercurrent of things going on, and there's a cave that was just actually there, and it was just full of arrowheads. And we would just get jars and jars of arrowheads and climb into this dark cave, and there's just a different world.
Yeah.
And then they thought, they would say about my mother from this little town, and she came in it was Cane Valley, Kentucky, and they would say, "Well, she got above her raisins." Like, she left the town, she wanted to go to college. So here's, like, her she had a brother who was the most popular kid in high school, very good looking and everything, and on the night of his high school graduation, He was riding around with boys in the back of a pickup truck, and he fell off, and his belt caught on the back of
Ow.
the truck. And so the boys were banging on the windows of the cab saying, "Nathan fell, stop." And they thought that, the driver thought they were joking. So he was just crushed repeatedly under the wheels.
Yeah.
It was a horrible tragedy. But my, grandparents had saved for him to go to college, and so my grandmother had a 4th grade education, and my grandfather had graduated from high school, but this was their dream, and my mother said, "Well, you've saved for him to go to college, can I have that money? Can I go to college?" And women just didn't. Women did not go to college. So it was a big fight for her to say, uh, I wanna, go to college. I wanna take this money from my dead brother." And, I wrote about it in this post, called "Bitch," on Hag Life, and describing my mother, who just never got along with her. She was hard to get along with. But I
There's
realize
nothing else.
now that I'm a hag, and it's like I appreciate that she was a bitch. I mean, she was aggressive like a woman was not supposed to be in the 1950s. And she always asked to see the manager. She was a Karen, and
Before
you
before
just
the term came up. Yeah.
right. She was a fighter,
Mm.
and people did a lot. Some people did not like her, and it was very important, as you know, in Southern culture, to be polite, to be indirect, not to confront people.
Oblique, yes.
Right, it's oblique, it's like,
This
"Y'all
my
come
ex-wife
over." Yeah.
hated. Yeah.
Right.
She moved to
It's like
Williamsburg from Fairbanks, Alaska. We were talking about being out west and cars
yeah,
not having
yeah,
license plates earlier. Um, and she hated Williamsburg culture because Williamsburg, Virginia, of course, is the heart of colonial Virginia
right,
history, and they kept a very, unearned kinda sense of, being above it all,
right, yeah, they're
and
just
it was
you
very you didn't offend that, or you'd be just like pariah,
yeah,
right.
it's fascinating. I really find the culture of the South fascinating, and so, when I tell my therapist, like,
Mhm.
things about my family, these things that happen, and he said, "Well, did you talk about it with your
Oh,
parents?" You must be joking.
well, that kept me out of recovery for a long time because we just don't talk about these kind of
Yeah,
things. It's very unseemly.
no,
No, it kept me away for 12 years from getting to a solution in Pittsburgh, of all places, since I was mentioning it
right.
earlier.
You
But
have
you
secrets,
do need to
and you
talk
keep
about
them,
things. We need to get our secrets out, and I think on
right?
Substack's one way to do it. So you're writing Hag Life, and do you wanna define hag for us? Because, it has carries a lot of weight, just those 3 letters, right?
Right. Well, it's about being an older woman and,
Mm.
uh, which no woman wants to become. Our whole culture is like, "No, don't do that. Don't get old."
Hold on. Gotta
Uh,
connect you with my friend Sophie then. Go
huh?
ahead. I gotta
Oh,
connect you
yeah.
with my friend Sophie. We'll talk in a second on that. Go ahead,
Yeah.
though. Tell me
So,
more.
yeah, and it's like, well, but I have friends my own age, these female friends, and we're doing stuff like, hiking and skiing and doing all these outdoor things and getting old. And, why not talk about it? Like, I don't know if you've heard of Oldster magazine on Substack.
I haven't gotten to that one yet, but I
It's
may
really
well.
good. And it's along the same themes of like, let's talk about it.
I haven't
Let's
realized that I have gotten old. I'm also a '63 model, February 4th, and,
you're
really
Capricorn. Oh,
just put
yes.
passed over into '63, February 4th now. Don't give me that Capricorn stuff. I'm an Aquarian,
Oh,
dyed
okay.
in the wool.
You're in the air. All
My
right.
father I missed my January 16th date, which would have put me right in step with my grandfather and my father. They were both
Ah,
born on January 16th, one in 1907 and one in 1933. So I missed it by a couple of weeks, so it's not coming out.
yeah.
So I ended up in Aquarius, um,
Yeah.
and with a Sagittarius rising sign because I
I'm
arrived
Sagittarius rising, of
3:21 in the
course.
morning. Hmm?
I'm Sagittarius rising too. We like adventure.
Well, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's important, and,
Yeah.
the fact you've got the ability to teach as well, I think that is in common, and tell the story, you
Yeah.
know? The Hag Life, the Oldster magazine. So getting back to the friend Sophie I mentioned briefly, I don't know if you've ever heard of the writer Sophie Burnham.
No.
She wrote a book called The Art. what the heck is it called? It's in this stack of books here somewhere. Um, and I've forgotten it. How could I forget the name of the book? Anyway, too many stacks of books around me. Um, but that was what she was famous for. She wrote it in her 20s when she was an assistant curator at, the Smithsonian or just after leaving it. The Art Crowd, that's what it's called. And it
Oh, okay.
basically exposed the art crowd a bit. She got this art critic named Clement Greenberg really pissed off at her. Uh, but I love that about her. She's now 89. She just had a knee replacement. I gotta get back in touch with her. I had her on here, and we talked about her latest book, which is called The Wonder and Happiness of Being Old.
Wow. I have to read that.
The
Yeah.
wonder and happiness of being old. Because she decided it's not about getting older, it's about she is now old, and she's not
Right.
right. So, after I interviewed her, she went off in December to, visit her sister in France and then on to Egypt on her own. And yet, she needs a knee replacement, so I guess that I can imagine, having to travel with a bad knee, but,
Right. But,
she did
it's
it,
amazing that
you
we
know?
can now just replace parts of our bodies.
Yes, indeed. And
It's
we have the Intrepid editor press has just joined us. This is, DePhilip Chalmers, and he's out on the West Coast, and he's been one of my guests here as well. We'll have him back on February 22nd. And good morning. Thank you for that. Yeah, can you see the chat there? So people that are can chime in on the chat. We don't have a lot of people
oh,
watching this morning, but
yeah. Oh, I see the chat. Yeah.
and we'll have more because this will be pushed out on YouTube and all kinds of different things,
Oh, cool.
you actually hit the, save
Yeah.
button. It'll break it up into clips as well, which is lovely. But let's get back to the hag life. So being older, women tend to become invisible as they get older, which is, I
Right.
think,
Yeah.
shocking in our culture. We ought to value all people, I think, at all ages.
Yeah, when I published my first book, and it was a sort of a collection of stories that they tried to make more into a novel,
Uh-huh.
Polite Society. It was all based in West Africa, where I was a Peace Corps volunteer.
Yep.
Shannon Ravenel, the editor at Algonquin in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, said, "This is your first book. This is really important." And I ended up not going with her, but she said, "You're young and sexy, and that's important. This has got to be a young, sexy book." And I was like, "Huh?" It's like, I don't, just I didn't know what sex and youth had to do with writing books, and she did. And
Okay, well, tell us.
Yes, well, like, you need to be young and sexy. There's, what they call, like, the writers under 30, you wanna be in these lists, and, like, they stop at a certain age, like,
Mm,
then you just don't exist anymore, even, as a writer.
hmm. Well, I think that's awful.
It's untrue, actually, is what it is. It's, yeah, it takes, because you have to live a while to write well, I think.
I think so too.
I remember, like, trying to write about death. I didn't know anything about death. Like, I didn't know people who had died,
Mm.
like, what's that like? And now I know a lot of people who died, and yeah,
Do you remember when you first became aware of death? It's one of my favorite topics.
it is. Well, um, my husband actually died when I was, 6 months pregnant with our second child. He was 38. He had Lou Gehrig's disease.
Oh my.
And we were living my dog is throwing her phone to herself. We were living in Taos, actually, and he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Yeah, you have ALS, and, you have 2 years to live." And he said, like David said, "Oh, so I'm toast." And he and the doctor cried, and he did die exactly 2 years later. So that yeah, it was, that's, shocking. Our daughter was 3, and our son was born 3 months later.
Yeah, it's really, kind of mind-blowing how fragile we are. I was talking with a friend who has stage 4 cancer, just yesterday morning, I think, and noting that eukaryotic life lasts any time at all that we maintain our homeostasis is kind of miraculous, and we ought to be in awe of
Right,
that and sort of a Dionysian frenzy over it even. But,
right.
we're not. We tend to just take it for granted. by the way, you're getting some I'm sorry for your tragic loss from, to Philip,
Oh,
and I am sorry for it too, of course, but at the same time, I don't I became aware of death when Bertrand Russell died. Isn't that weird? I was
yeah.
it was 1970, it was February 2nd. I was just about to turn 7, and we were pulling into the driveway of the house we lived in Birchwood Gardens in Williamsburg. Little brick rancher that was built in '63. We moved in when I was 4 months old, so I barely remember it, but I remember driving into the driveway in my father's Ford Fairlane 500 wagon. It was 1966 white wagon with, like, red vinyl interior. I can remember that vividly, hearing on the radio and my father noting that that was an important person, Bertrand Russell, and that he had died. And I said, "What does that mean?"
Oh, wow.
And I didn't understand up until that point that this ends at some point and that you don't come back. And then my father was able to convey to me the finality of death, and it was a shock, for a
Yeah.
6-year
So
kid.
you were not raised in the, like, in the Baptist tradition of, rebirth and salvation? Huh?
I was a Methodist.
You were well, okay, that's close.
Yeah, Methodist is a Baptist that can read and write, they say.
Ha!
That's a joke, but and I hope
I
nobody will
think it's
be
like sort of
offended.
softcore Baptist.
Sorry?
Softcore.
So how did as a Baptist, they inculcate their infants into the death idea or
Well, so I we were at church 3 times a week, and, there was rebirth, and that's what I got out of his, like,
uh,
always rebirth and salvation, and that is so much in my writing and in my blood, like, the old hymns are beautiful, they're in my blood,
mm,
and but that idea of just you are reborn, you we're you start over
I see,
and over again, yeah, and one of the yeah. There's more than one life is
we're
kind of
sprinkled at birth, but that's about it, and then, and there's some water involved, I think, in, confirmation too, but I was 10 by then, well acquainted by death by then. But it
yeah. I mean, I was born again when I was 7, and
mhm.
I did it because I was thinking a lot about, death, and, my I was afraid that my parents were gonna, like, go to heaven, and I wouldn't be there, and they would feel horrible. I mean, they would be so sad to lose me,
Oh,
and
so you might
we
go
couldn't. Right, I would be in
instead you
hell
go the other
because
way.
I wasn't saved.
I see.
So, it was
Yeah,
like they were gonna be in heaven, and they were gonna be like, "Oh, Melanie, like, we lost her, she's in hell." And so I had to be with them.
interesting. How do you feel about the afterlife these days?
Um, well, I think that, the our souls are immortal. When my husband died, it was so he was at home, and there was a hospice nurse there, and, he was lying in our bed, and he said, "Am I dying?" And, he had gone from this strapping, handsome young man to, like, he weighed 80 pounds. And I said, "No, I don't think so." And I went in the kitchen to get a cup of coffee, and I came back, and I was talking to them, and the nurse had cut off the breathing, the oxygen. And I said, "Why did you do that?" And she said, "Oh, you don't know." And he had died while I was getting coffee, but he just his soul disappeared. He looked nothing like himself. He was gone.
Interesting.
But
Isn't
and
that
so it was interesting. It's like, "Oh, like, your body, is not you."
yes, it's an animal that carries the imp that I am around, I say.
That's great, yeah. And
And I
then
get that a
we have
little bit from Robert Fripp, who's a guitarist. He talks about inhabiting the animal, that the animal needs discipline. And so
oh, that's a
there's a
cool
lot in
idea,
his
yeah.
practice about discipline.
Yeah,
I enjoy the idea. My discipline is quite chaotic, though. I have
yeah,
that my anima is the goddess Eris. Are you familiar with
yeah,
Eris, the
yes,
uninvited? Yeah.
yeah.
And goddess of chaos and discord, from which a lot of creativity springs. I mean, we wouldn't have the Western civilization without her.
Right. Right. Yeah, and
He set off the Trojan
yeah.
Wars after all.
And, the whole creative life is trying to find that balance between the
Right,
chaos and the order.
right.
And it's like
And
you have
order
to
and
make a mess
history,
and then clean it up.
one of these things I've gotta dig into is Order and History by Eric Voegelin. Have you ever heard of it? It's
No.
more a work of political science, I think, and philosophy than anything else. But, my sponsor in Pittsburgh read it, and he would be always shooting way over my head. He was big into Friedrich Nietzsche and the gay science in particular. I think is it am I gonna remember? Is it Aphorism 290 about style? And, we were talking about writers and style, the people who really we resonate with. Raymond Carver, for instance, had a certain
Yeah.
style to his writing.
Oh, he was so brilliant.
And
Yeah.
it makes a huge difference to whether or not the story hits home and can inhabit you.
Yes.
And in a way that sort of is it enriches the imp that carries me around, and the imp is always, like, wanting to toss around different things, and it's very much like a primate. It's the monkey mind, if you will. People talk
Yeah.
about,
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
one of the King Crimson works not too long back was called Radical Action to Do Something to the Monkey Mind, and I can't remember the full title now. But, that happens when you get older. Yeah. My
Right.
mother has
Yeah.
lost her memory to a large extent, and though she used to be able to tell you the accession number of any object in the Colonial Williamsburg collection.
Oh my
She was the
goodness.
registrar, and she was responsible for knowing where everything was.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Because they
That's
move
cool.
around. They move
Yeah.
things around, the curators do, and,
Yeah.
they're quite unruly. So there's the
Yeah.
talk about order and chaos and things like that. My parents both were archivists
Oh,
at
yeah.
the
Yeah.
state archives of, the Virginia State Library.
Yeah.
My mother wasn't able to go to college. You were talking about that in your own background and your grandmother, right? Was she the one to go
No,
to college?
my
Mother.
mother would yeah, my mother fought her way to college. Yeah.
And you said you had a difficult relationship with her, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think, in a way, like, I was the persona of her dreams. I was, I had everything that she'd never had, and my family had money, and so, she wanted, like, me to have ballet lessons, piano lessons, tap lessons, things that as a little farm girl she had dreamed of, and I didn't like them, and I wasn't good at them. It was
Oh,
I couldn't yeah, it was not my thing, uh, and I think there was some jealousy though that I got, I could go to college anywhere I wanted and, I could do I could, it was just so free, and the freedom I think, was I think she was jealous.
well, sure, you were growing up in the '70s, right, as a young
Yeah.
child, and then
Yeah, I was born in December of '63.
you graduated in '81 or '82?
82, yeah.
'82 from high school? So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and I
that
was a
that
mess.
generation had, we had s my parents were so unprepared for what was happening in the world then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
My
Yeah.
background, as I mentioned, being a fifer, at 11 years old, I joined the Fife and Drum Corps, and it's a quasi-military kinda thing.
Yeah.
We had simple rules for complex performance with high quality, but basically, our music master had been raised as a drummer boy in the British Army and was the youngest drum major in the history of the Scots Guards before coming out of that and coming to us to train us up. So he was no joke, but he also let us train ourselves. So the result was you had a sort of Lord of the Flies kind of organization, if that resonates.
Yeah. Oh,
And we
yeah.
were brutal. But, at the same time, that sort of forged me into who I am, and I learned, of course, from guys who were coming up in the late '60s and early '70s, and you know what culture was like then? William and Mary was right there, which is a college that was known for its party,
Yes, I know William and
and I
Mary,
was
yeah,
exposed to everything very young,
yeah,
and my parents
yes.
had no way of dealing with that.
Yeah, and I was a wild child. I was the youngest and the only girl,
Mm,
and I was an alcoholic, and I was just way out there, and I was,
mm.
I'm grateful, and they're my parents were hardworking, and they looked at this and,
Right. Very hardworking.
"What? what? Yeah, and the way a lady was supposed to act was just prescribed. It was
Jackie
Victorian.
Onassis, Jackie
Yeah,
Kennedy Onassis?
yeah.
Yeah, she was the role model for my mother for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely.
That and Scarlett O'Hara.
Oh,
My wife thinks she's
absolutely. I
definitely
was
Scarlett
named
O'Hara.
after Melanie in Gone with the Wind.
You were? How
Yeah.
about that?
I mean,
Yeah.
I was fed that movie, I watched it over and over again, and that and Shirley Temple.
Oh,
And what I was really at UNC Chapel Hill was I was just a wild ass, just, I'm surprised I even graduated from anything. I
so
mean
UNC Chapel Hill is where you did your undergraduate work.
right,
Mm.
yeah.
And were you
And
studying
then
English there, or what would you.
I I majored in religious studies.
Right, right, interesting.
Yeah, I loved my teacher. His name was, Mr. Tyson. He wouldn't go by the title doctor. He was fascinating, and, I was just, fascinated. We read, like, Daniel Defoe and a little bit of Kant and things, and I he was just, he was a brilliant mind. Uh, and when I graduated and I was trying looking for jobs, I said, "What," people ask me, "What is religious studies?" And he said, "I don't know." That's such a good question. He loved questions.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Religious studies, one of comparative religion is something that's really near to my heart. This is one that I share with my father, and he really liked a lot. Are you familiar with it?
Oh. Oh, yeah, Joseph Campbell, yeah. I'm
And the
just writing
title
down all these books. Yeah, Thou Art That.
this is the first one released after Campbell died, Joseph Campbell Foundation, I guess it's called. Does it say here? Yeah, Joseph Campbell Foundation. That's why I started, to a large extent, the Harold B. Gill Foundation when my father died. Was to
Yeah.
carry on his legacy and republish his works, as much as possible. He got ebook republished just before he died. Like, the week before he died, he was contacted by an editor who wanted to republish this one as an ebook, and she did. The letter for him to sign arrived, like, the day after he died. And
Oh,
speaking of your husband's death, it reminded me of my father's. I was at his bedside. He had a DNR, but they couldn't find it. It wasn't on the refrigerator. It probably should have been. I found that out later. If you have a DNR, do not resuscitate order, put it on your refrigerator where the paramedics can find it, because they
that's
didn't.
interesting.
But he had been gone. He had
Huh.
fallen in the bathroom after my brother-in-law had helped him onto the toilet. I didn't realize how bad it was. My family had contacted me, my sister and her, husband, but I didn't think it was as severe as it was, and I didn't go down until the next morning, and I called the hospital to find out how he was, but because I knew that they'd been resuscitated and was back in the hospital, that he'd been taken home and fallen out of his chair at one point. The EMTs came and put him in his chair. Somehow he got upstairs, and like I said, my brother-in-law had helped him to the toilet. He had fallen in the bathroom and blocked the door. So the EMTs got in there and resuscitated him, took him to the hospital, intubated him. So when I got in there, he was intubated, but he was just seizing up every so often. Uh,
Yeah. How
there
old
was
was
no reaction to the
Yeah,
touch gauze to the eyeball or
yeah.
whatever. So he was gone. He was 91
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
change. And that was pretty amazing. He had survived lung cancer at 89, and,
Wow.
that had put him into a radiation, treatment for the squamous cell tumor. Been effective, but it gave him a type of pneumonia that put him on oxygen for the last year and a half of his life. Uh,
Yeah.
she wasn't very happy about, I don't think, and he was suffering a lot, and I knew that. It was like watching somebody being slowly crucified.
Oh god. I know, yeah.
Joke about it saying, "If you bear your pain with pleasure, you'll have lots of pleasure." There's no way around it, it's just gonna be bad, and
Yeah.
but we had this meeting of the minds. I've got books all over the place that we shared, and I've
Oh,
got
that's
this
so
book.
nice.
I don't know if I can lay hands on it. It's tucked away up here somewhere that, he recorded from 2008 on everything he was reading. So
Oh, really? Oh,
go through it.
that's a wonderful legacy that he
It
left
is.
for you, really.
Life of the mind. So
Yeah.
important, even if the body fails us. And
Yeah.
ALS, you mentioned that, is
Yeah.
your husband
The
died of,
body, yeah.
and the body
But
really does fall out from under you as that's happening, and I had a friend out in Oregon. It's where she moved to. She was from Williamsburg originally in that area, and she'd been in the fire department and all this stuff. She traveled to India to get Vedantic treatment or whatever that is. I can't pronounce all the Indian words, but you know the different types of medicine are
Yes.
practiced traditionally there. And then she was in Oregon, so she had assisted suicide available to her.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we have that here in house. Yeah, and I'm gonna do that. I'm actually a little bit excited about it.
Yeah.
I have yeah, I'm gonna have the party before I die, the funeral, and I've picked out, my some songs. One of them is Amazing Grace, and one of them is that song that has that line, if heaven ain't a lot like Dixie, I don't I don't think I wanna go. But I want to tell you a story about death because, like, for someone who had never experienced death, it just came in in droves. So,
Mm.
about 15 years after my husband died, well, no, it was more like 12. My middle brother, who was a physician in New York City, went on a yoga retreat um, in Costa Rica, and he swam out and he didn't come back. He drowned. He was
Wow.
50, yeah, I think he was 52. So the effect that had on my family was just immense. My older brother, who's also a physician, went out with his wife, who's
Mhm.
also a physician. They went out to Costa Rica, like, to figure out what had happened.
Yes.
And it was really terrible because the brother who died was married, and my whole family blamed his wife just to find someone to blame because, she didn't even swim. But they went out there, and when they were out there, my, my the brother's wife, the living brother's wife, who was a doctor, had a stroke and became paralyzed. And so then, like, no one could go back in New York, no one could go to my brother's funeral, but the effect was just incredible on my family. My father went into the hospital and was dying of grief, and that was actually the diagnosis. He was there for a month, he's dying, and we don't know why, and it's grief. And he came out, he had, when he came out, he had Alzheimer's. And so he had a DNR, but my brother who was in charge of him, became in charge of him, pushing all the other doctors away, kicking hospice out of the house, put a feeding tube in him. And it was horrible to see, like, such a dignified man in a diaper on this, hospital bed and in the den, screaming, just screaming, and, just out of his he just and he couldn't I could look into his eyes, and he loved me. I was the favorite, and he was my favorite. Um, and there was he couldn't do anything. Um and but, and I just kept begging my brother to take the feeding tube out, and I would talk to the family, "Please, please," and then they would say, he would say, "Oh, Melanie wants to kill dad." It's horrible, horrible. But my
People have all
father
kinds of ways of dealing with it, and most of them are not elegant because we're not pre
no, I mean, it's
well,
brutal.
I mean,
So
we
my
really need to do better, and I believe. Go ahead.
so my father, though, he died on his
Mhm.
70th wedding anniversary. And he, at the time, couldn't talk, apparently couldn't understand anything, but I know he chose that date. So he had been married to my mother for 70 years, and that's the day. It was like he just kinda rang the bell, and it was like, "I did it." 'Cause my mother was a very difficult woman, and they were, talking about Victorian, like, we don't divorce. You don't get a divorce. You marry when you're 20, you've made a decision, you've made a commitment, and you're on it. And, I thought that was just so cool that some part of him was still not just conscious, but the same determined man he'd always been. It's like, "I'm gonna do this, and this is my death date, no
This
matter
is
what you
how
do to
it's
me."
gonna be.
Yeah, he was the patriarch, and he said, "This is how it is."
You know, Bill Wilson died on his wedding anniversary as well in '71. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No, I didn't know that.
He was married to Lois Wilson, and, she lived on for a while, but he died on their anniversary of emphysema. Um, Smoked himself to death, basically,
Yeah,
as a lot of people did back in the day. That usually got us there quicker. My father was a smoker up until he was about 70, and then he
yeah.
decided he would quit at 70. He went on for another 21 years, so that's not bad. Um, it's a tough thing to watch, though, how people die of things that are quite preventable, and and, that life is so precious. The fact we can maintain homeostasis as long as we can, and while we've got breath in the body, we have the opportunity to tell each other stories.
Right.
Um, and the stories of death are so important. Denial of death was one of the things that helped me a great deal. Are you familiar with that one?
No.
The Denial of Death was written by Ernest Becker, who was a psychologist, and, he was particularly focused on it, and his idea was terror management is a great deal of what we do here, and Harrowings is named Harrowings partially because life itself, it can be harrowing. Terror
Yeah.
management
Oh,
is
yeah,
knowing
yeah.
mortal, knowing that you're always engaged in some sort of immortality project. So the body of work that is
Yeah,
Harrowings is an immortality project of sorts. I'm laying this stuff down in hopes that historians of the future, like my dad was a historian of the 18th century, that they pick up what I'm laying down and maybe, it'll benefit somebody else down the road. I can be a good ancestor. I don't have
right,
children of my own, but I can be a good ancestor to the progeny that are out there. God bless them. They've got their challenges ahead of them.
right.
Do what I can with what I have. Denial of Death, Ernest Becker. It figures in the movie Annie Hall. Are you familiar with that one?
Yes.
And when they're splitting up their possessions, Annie and what was his name in the film? I forgot. Alvy, the singer. Um, she gives him the book, Denial of Death, and says, "Any book with death in the title, that's yours." A very important subject. And,
Yes.
and in private
But
interview,
so
talks about it a lot, about how he's like, "This ends?" When he found out. Kinda like when I found out Bertram,
yeah, yeah.
"This ends? What? I'm not sure I wanna face that." And I remember, like, the last time I ever smoked pot, in 1997, I woke up after I gotten stoned earlier in the afternoon, and I had the awareness that I was gonna die, and it was very present to me. It was not gonna be immediate, but it was present to me that I would eventually have to go through that gate, and I was like, "I don't wanna do that. That's terrifying." And I never had that kind of feeling again, but it was a very interesting
But
sort
so
of
I have a
realization.
question.
Go ahead.
Do you ever wonder why you're still alive? I mean,
Oh,
you
yeah,
talked about alcoholism and you must have lived
I
a
nearly
bit on the
died of
wild
trying to
side.
treat a flu with scotch in Pittsburgh, actually. It was a really
Yeah.
interesting opportunity
So,
to
like, how
get
have you
close up to the
escaped
reaper.
death? Yeah. How have you escaped so far?
Well, that time I was about 3 hours from death, and intravenous IV of, antibiotics pulled me back, which the doctors weren't sure was gonna work, and they called my parents got in touch with them from Williamsburg. They weren't sure if I'd be alive or dead when they got there. So, and that hung by the thinnest of threads. It's kind of a cute
It
story.
is. Yeah.
And it's cute in this aspect. We'd gone to this party after going to a reading of Ovid's Metamorphosis that the classics department had put on at Pitt as sort of a extracurricular activity. My good friend Deb and me and a guy I got befriended over in Augsburg, Germany the previous summer. And, there'd been a bit of wine flowing at the classics department to go with the Ovid's Metamorphosis readings. And then I go to this party on Walnut Street, and I find the last beer. They ran out of alcohol. Can you imagine having a party,
That's bad.
graduate school, and running out? Um, that was kinda shocking. So I passed around the last beer, being very generous sort. Everybody who hit off that beer caught the flu. We actually used to call it a plague party because everybody had gotten this terrible flu.
Yeah.
And mine was bad enough that when I went over to my friend Carol in the art history department at Pitt and Frick Fine Arts Building, she said she'd gone over to the infirmary and gotten some antibiotics because she was feeling that the flu wasn't passing off. I had determined that I probably ought to do something like that because I wasn't feeling great either, but I had to go over and join the crew at Hemingway's Cafe on Forbes Avenue for the German Slav happy hour because I founded that with a friend of mine from the Russian department. It's just really great to get Germans and Russians together and have a few beers just for the
Yeah.
irony.
Yeah.
So, the wall is fallen. We're in a different world. This is the 90s, 96 it was. So I didn't feel great. I went home. I stopped by Chief's, which was Chief's is legendary. It's gone now. Like, so many things are gone. Hemingway's is closing in May. So it's like, oh God, Pittsburgh's no longer Pittsburgh. But all things will pass. I do the Buddhist thing with that, that everything's
Yeah.
again. So I think I'm pretty sick, and I try to get myself better with some Pete's Wicked Ale and some Marlboros. Doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I call my friend Deb and say, "Deb," she had gotten on the antibiotics. I said, "I'm pretty sick here. I'm running pretty high fever. It'd be really nice." And I was on our answering machine. This is back when they had those taped answering machines.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, "I'm running a pretty high fever here. It'd be great if you could call me back. I think I could stand to go to the emergency room." Now, we used to frequent a little place on Ellsworth Avenue called the Elbow Room, and her Japanese roommate got the message. And when Deb called to get her messages, which is something you would do back in those days,
Yeah.
weird thing, she's her Japanese roommate, Shiharu, said, "Oh, Hal called. I think he wanted to go and get a beer. He said he had the fever. He said it'd be great if you call him back." And Deb thought, "Fever? That doesn't sound like Saturday Night Fever. What is this supposed to?" And so Shiharu had interpreted emergency room as elbow room, yes, a name,
Oh my gosh. Oh,
instead
wow.
of understanding that I was very sick. So it's about noon the following day that Deb called me. When she drove back to pick me up, she had to clear the snow off of her car. Classic Wonder Boys kind of winter day, right? She drives over to pick me up, and she homes in on my apartment on the 8th floor by the sound that she says is like a barking dog, which is me gasping for breath. When I open the door, my complexion is a grayish green, she told me. And she was trying to figure out how it being about, I don't know, 5'2" and maybe 100 pounds, she was gonna get me to a car if I
Yeah.
passed, because I'm not that little. Though I was lighter then, but it wouldn't have been easy. I managed to get to the car. When she dropped me off at the hospital door, I said, "There's a chair." So she was gonna park the car. I go to straight to that chair and flop down in it. Nurse comes by, says, "Are you alright?" I said, "No, I'm very sick." And she said, "You were just gonna sit here then until someone found you?" And I said, "That's right." She brought a wheelchair. I stood for my blood pressure, 70/30. Blood
Oh, wow.
temperature 103. I didn't walk again for 3 days. I was on my back in ICU, and I survived it. Now why? And what do you do with that one precious life you have after dodging the reaper like that? Does it make a big impact? Yeah, it does. I mean, it's all borrowed time after that. And I'm aware of how very fragile we all are, so I tend to be motivated, as my, grand sponsor, Lewis Norton, used to say. He said he didn't write his novels really with an audience in mind. Kinda like what we were talking about having subscribers here on Substack.
Right.
I don't write for them. I write for my best self. That's the way Buddy phrased it.
Hmm.
Inner sense of loving kindness. It loves him as much as it possibly could, but like to see him do well anyway. And that's the presence that he wrote for. And I think that's the presence we should all work for, regardless of what impact it has out there in the world, by being a radiant source of loving kindness, right? Hopefully that all of our work will help other people feel connected. And your novel, for instance, this murder mystery with this
Yeah.
asshole, somebody's gonna identify with that asshole. I probably will. And by not changing him for your editor, you're actually serving something that's, well, you just
Wow, that's really
on
I
you.
like that. That's really great. Yeah.
Trying to segue back to you.
Yeah, well, my last drink was in 1992, and,
Oh,
I was driving down this, little, highway, two-lane highway in, North Carolina, and, I was seeing triple. Like, there
oh,
were 3 double yellow lines, there were 3 cars in front of me, and I had to go to the bathroom, I had to pee, and I there were 3 ramps. So I, knew, "Oh, okay, one of those ramps is real, but I don't know which one, and if I try to drive, I would just go through the air." So I was like,
oh my god.
I was, like, angry, and I was like, "Okay, well, I'm an American, and this is my car, and I can pee in it if I want." And so I did, and then it was like, "Oh, okay, well, all everything's made of molecules that are in
Excited.
constant motion. This car in front of me is molecules. This is all molecule. I can go through the molecules."
Yeah.
And so
Makes
I was
makes sense.
coming up to the car, and, like, they got out of the way. They pulled over on the side of the road, and my feelings were hurt. It was part of alcoholism. And so, I don't know what really happened, but I
Fascinating.
blacked out, I guess, and I came
Mm.
to, like, surrounded by patrol cars, and I looked out the window, and there's this, like, really cute cop, and, yeah, I lit a cigarette, and then he wanted me to get out of the car. I got out of the car, and the other cops were assholes, and they were like, "Oh god, it's reeks in here. It's just," and they searching my car without a warrant and all that stuff. And this cop, well, I could tell he was in love with me because he put handcuffs on me and he said, "I'm gonna just put these on really loosely, okay?" And he let me sit in the front seat with him. And he said, "Do you think you're different from other people?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I am very different from other people." And he said, "Well, do you think you're an alcoholic?" And I said, "No, I don't think so." And I thought, well, we would go to a bar and I would, seduce this guy and I'd have this it was just like this
Alright.
thing. Right, as you do. And instead, he took me to jail, and I was a little surprised, and, I got my mug shot, sticking my tongue out at the guy, and it was his last film, and he was mad and all this stuff, but, yeah, I have no idea how I could have survived that.
So did that get you in, so to speak? In with us, that is, that are
Yeah.
recovering? Okay.
Yeah, well, no, I had a breakfast beer. I always had a breakfast beer saved in my refrigerator in the apartment. So
Mm.
I for see, this was before DUIs, this was DWI, and so, I went
Sure,
home, and
sure.
like they said, your blood level alcohol it's mostly alcohol. I mean, there's just no reason you should be alive, but I went
Right,
home.
right, well, tolerance builds up, so you can work
Right, and
your way up.
yeah,
I
and I
worked
was
my way back up, by the way, when I got back from I recuperated in Williamsburg for a couple of weeks after my event, and I had to use a little spirometer to get my lung strength up, and that took a long time. But as soon as I got back to Pittsburgh, my friend who had driven me to the hospital asked me if I wanted to go out and get a beer, and I did.
of
So I
course.
went back in and I worked my tolerance back up, worked my lungs back up, and by the following summer, I was off to the races again. I didn't come back in until '97.
Yeah,
Anyway,
good to go. You were good to go, yeah. Yeah,
look at
so
you.
I had at the time, I was teaching at, Cape Fear Community College, and I had a
Got it.
student came to my apartment, and I was just such a bragger, and I said, "Watch me." I told her about my adventure, and this is the last beer I'll ever drink.
Wow.
And I drank it, and then and she said, "I wanna be just like you when I'm your age," like, she was 20, "I wanna be, a writer, and I wanna be a teacher," and I was just so, like but then my beer was gone. I didn't have a drink, and I had made sure I lived in walking distance to all the river bars, but I called AA, and I said I ran out of beer. They were laughing. And, just such little chance. It was just I never went to rehab. I didn't know what rehab was. This old woman
No, I
showed
didn't
up
do that either.
in a car, and I was looking out the window of this old, Victorian house and, like, "I don't think I'm gonna go out there." And I went out, and I got in her car, and, I didn't know where my car was. Well, my car was untouched. It was just really a miraculous time.
Well, it's lucky you didn't kill anybody in the car, that's for
I
sure.
know.
I
I
got
know.
stopped one time. I was hitting about 75 in a 55 zone, as I was apt to do, and somebody flashed their lights at me coming up the other way, and I put the brakes on in my little truck. I was driving a Ram 50 at the time. This is in the '80s sometime. And I was coming back from Cricket Wednesdays because we play cricket on Market Square in Colonia, Williamsburg, for the excuse basically of going to Paul's Deli afterwards and drinking pitchers of Bass. Um, I was braking and I had the nose of that truck going down and the cop's lights come on the other side. He swings around behind me and I do the field sobriety test. There's a joke somewhere about like, it's not that you fall down 7 times, it's that you get up 8. That's not how sobriety tests work. But,
Yeah.
uh, I passed it. I didn't have any falling down. No, walking the line or whatever and doing the alphabet backwards or whatever I had to do.
Oh, yeah.
Um I probably couldn't have done it sober. I
Right.
was laxed enough, and I'd blown like a .10, which isn't, like, really high, but it is above the line these days, But the guy just
Yeah.
followed me into Kings Mill. He didn't put me in jail or anything. I wonder sometimes if he'd intervened, what would have happened? Would I have taken to it then? Because, I did take to the 12 steps idea when I was introduced to it in 1985 on my second hospitalization for stopping drinking. In '83 and '85, I stopped drinking abruptly, and both times required hospitalization for a very polite diagnosis of bipolar disorder, which my doctors say now I have never suffered from.
Yeah.
I've suffered
Yes.
from detoxification from
Right.
alcohol.
Yeah.
When you stop sleeping and don't sleep for 30 days, well,
Yeah.
you'd be put into a different space, and I was trying to throw a party down at the Kings Mill Marina in Williamsburg, where near my father's neighborhood, and, the James City County Police took the form of a power greater than myself.
Right.
Put
Yeah.
me in
They're
the
out there.
maximum security wing of Eastern State Hospital, which is a very interesting place to be. Lots of interesting people to meet,
Right. But,
lots of
that's what
interesting ideas.
that's what I thought about AA. I was like, "Why are these people are like I liked them. They were like the people at the bar."
Yes, they are. They are
They
the people
and
at the
I was
bar
like,
that
"Oh, yeah."
survived.
But they're not drinking, and I was just like, "That's just so how can they not be drinking?" And, yeah.
Probably some of them might need to.
Well, no, I mean, they were so I was like, "Huh." And then I thought, "Wow, how does this organization work? Because it's not organized. Like, there's no leader."
That's a brilliant thing. And if we'd only recognize that more, I think, the benign chaos, the anarchy, the
Right.
kind of like every man for himself and God against all. That's
Right.
a title by Werner Herzog, by the way, of his memoir. If you haven't read it yet, it's worth the price of admission. Werner Herzog in general is worth the price of admission for just about anything he does. I love this film, Lo and Behold, about the internet. But I do think that, yeah, what you're talking about, that nobody in charge. I was interested in that in '97 when I came back. 85, I observed from the back of the room, having been politely diagnosed as a bipolar person.
Yeah.
I didn't have alcoholism. I wasn't one of you. It wasn't one of these people who was so unseemly, like we were talking about earlier, as to
Yeah.
talk about these things. We don't talk about these things. We don't talk about anything.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It's gotta be nice,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
so
my parents never mentioned it, never.
my parents
Family, they
were
just
deathly afraid.
never.
And they still are. I mean, I think they'd be appalled to know that I'm out here on a
I
podcast
know.
world talking about such things. The
Right.
World Health Organization came up with recently in 2023, this nice statement about the safe amount of alcohol for human consumption.
Oh, what is it?
None at all.
Really?
Yeah. And we should know that. People should know that. The World Health Organization has established there is no safe amount of alcohol for human consumption at all. And why?
Huh.
Well, it's a carcinogen for starters. And then after that, of course, there's no redeeming value to it anymore. I mean, maybe in the 18th century where you would drink cider rather than drink the water to avoid
Right. Right.
diseases, that's may make sense. Not true anymore, at least in the
Right.
developed world.
Right.
And if we could do better about educating people, we probably would save more people. One of the problems I have in our fellowship is that it can be very hard to detect the principles being practiced in all our affairs, as we're to do when we get to 12, right? And you can practice any step with a 1 in it, I was taught, 1, 10, 11, 12. So I can promptly admit when I'm wrong. My wife tells me, "You're really good at that, but could you manage not to be wrong in the first place?" If you're familiar with The Big Lebowski, my wife compares me to Walter often enough. "You're not wrong, Hal, you're just an asshole."
Right.
So, it's it's that, and then there's the prayer and meditation part, and I got this friend in Borneo named Bernard, and he's been around about 40 plus years in our fellowship, having gotten sober in Hong Kong. He's a Buddhist Yorkshireman married to a Roman Catholic Chinese woman, and he's, in his 80s now, probably coming up on 90. I hope he's doing well. He was having some problems with age, but he was, in his 80s riding his bike all over Borneo. And he is also serving as Her Majesty's, or now His Majesty's man in Kuching as the British consulate. But he said, "Don't just do something, sit there." You Corresponding, it's midnight my time, it's noon his time, and we'd be corresponding on instant messenger. About 2000, I guess, is when I met him when I was living in Denmark. I moved to Denmark, by the way, you know, with about 3 years and change under my belt. And the result of that was that the relationship I was moving there for did not work. A month and a half, I would never saw her again. But I had a job in Denmark, and I got
Do
a
doing
re
what?
going at, December 7th, 2001, a day which will live in infamy, and, I almost didn't make it back again, and I've done this again and again and again. The last time for me was actually September 10th, 2015, first day of the Lock-In Festival south of Charlottesville. I'd gone down there, I had a window of opportunity, and I just realized I was really bad at it. And I'd not been any too smart, and I threw this stuff out the next morning and went on to the concert and sobered up. By the time Hot Tuna and Friends hit the stage with 50 Years of the Jefferson Airplane, I was feeling alright, and I didn't tell anybody about it for a year and a half. Nobody's business. But, what was interesting about that to me was that that morning, before I drank, I'd gone to a meeting, West Side Club in Georgetown, and, a guy from Pittsburgh happened to be there. I've not seen him in a while. I mean, he's kind of an acquaintance. I didn't know him that well, but he was in a lot of the meetings I went to in the Shady Side area. And so I was like, after the meeting, I said, "Oh, that is you, Jim. You want to go to breakfast? Tell me what you're doing in town, man." And he told me, "Well, I'm here because my sister-in-law is getting a medal at the White House." Oh, is your sister-in-law, Jim? I just knew this guy as somebody who worked for the post office in Pittsburgh. I didn't know what he did. He may run the joint. I had no idea. Didn't care. Don't care who people are, right? It's anonymous after all. Well, this is who his sister-in-law.
Oh, oh, wow.
If you've ever heard of Annie Dillard. Uh,
Yeah, oh, yeah,
and
I
when I
know the
got
book.
to Mountain House where I was gonna be doing this drinking place my parents had up in the Amherst County, which is our homeland, actually, my Revolutionary War ancestors settled up there. There's a volume of Annie Dillard's books next to my mother's bedside. It's like a god
Oh,
something,
yeah,
and I just sort of ignored that because we do ignore all those little messages from the universe when we got a plan, a single
right.
plan of this is the way it's gonna be, and I was really lucky I wasn't good at it. I'd interrupted there 5 years, 28 days, and 8 months, I later calculated, and, of continuous sobriety, and now I've been continuously sober since, largely on the basis of I take personal responsibility for the hand and voluntary muscles in my arm.
I did that too. It's like if your hand doesn't touch alcohol, then you probably won't drink it.
It's hard to get anybody to pour it in me too. There's just not people serving me that way. So, if they don't serve me and I don't touch it, I'm less likely to get it into my system. It's
Right,
just
and
there's
it's so simple. Yeah,
safe amount 0. Okay.
yeah,
That makes good sense, but then there's all this other life stuff we have to do. We have to navigate that and other people,
right?
you know? I don't know.
Life is
That's a
really,
misfortune.
really hard. Yeah.
I've come down to the idea that this is my problem largely, and this is most of our problem.
The
Opposable
opposable thumb?
Yeah, we're always trying to manipulate things,
Right.
right?
And I think it's interesting that, a lot of, creative people are alcoholics and drug addicts.
Yeah, well, that's true. They can't do anything else.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think
Kidding.
I'm not sure what it is exactly. For I probably fear is at the bottom of it all. And I wanted to talk about a little bit about
Yeah,
like feeling like, since this book that I was writing for 15 years
yeah,
isn't
let's bring it
selling,
back.
and what am I doing? I left my career. I don't have any money. Um, and so I just have all this fear in my life, and I haven't been writing since January. And so I started skiing, and I live in a ski town now. Taos, New Mexico is my friends who just ski all the time, and I think it's so cool. I have people talk about ski envy when I was jealous of people who can really ski, and they go up to Taos Mountain Ski Valley, and it's like wow. So I started skiing this year, and I'm not a very good skier. I mean, I'm kind of terrified of it. But if and at first I would just go and like I would stand there at the lift and it would be like, okay, I'm scared, but I got here and now I can go home. And then I would go ski like, I would do like 2 runs go home, and and I just keep doing this because it's thrilling. I mean, and, it's thrilling, but I know I'm not very good at it. I don't wanna break my leg and all this stuff,
Mm.
but I really feel like that's the antidote to being stuck, is doing something that scares you.
Doing something that scares you. And fear is at the root. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah,
There's fear and love, 2 motivating principles. I'm either
right.
motivated by being in love with the idea, and that's sort of why I do this stuff, right? That idea of loving kindness and
Yeah,
attune myself to that. But there's the shadow of fear.
right.
So I have my shadow that I can't see, but you can. You can see my shadow,
I
right?
could see your shadow. How?
Potentially. I mean, we do. We see each other's shadows. We see parts of our other people that they can't see necessarily. And it might be a projection of our own shadow onto the space that person occupies, but we probably share some of the same shadow things like fear. I think that it's like dark and light, right? It's and there's a tendency for things to become their opposite. Are you familiar with enantiodromia?
No.
I wasn't either, but John Perry Barlow put me in touch. In fact, he's got a lovely YouTube talk called "In Antidromia," and this is his memoir, "Mother American Night." He finished writing the acknowledgments on February 5th, 2018, and died 2 days later, February 7th, 2018. But he was one of the founders of the Electronic Frontiers Foundation, EFF.org, which I like to advertise. He was also a lyricist for the Grateful Dead. He wrote Bobby's lyrics.
Oh, really? Huh.
So, and he had some time in recovery as well. He went into rehab, and Bobby was in one that he went to, and Bobby left as soon as John showed up. So I don't know. There's a lot of interesting cross currents, right, in our lives. But in Antiodromia was a concept by Heraclitus, who's the same guy who said, you can't step in the same river twice. And the idea was a thing is always becoming its opposite. And we really have to be on guard about that, particularly in intense times, politically speaking. And a lot of what this guy was doing was politically motivated. One of the things he ran a ranch out in Wyoming. That's where he was born, actually, as well. But he attended Wellesley as and became class president of Wellesley or in the 60s sometime, early 60s. So he had quite a Forrest Gumpish kind of life. But the guy and then writing in Antiodromia or talking about it really put me in mind of how we have to be constantly on guard about becoming that which we hate. So motivated by love, yes, but you can take that too far. And
So, how does this happen that a thing becomes its opposite?
well, when the earth rotates, day becomes night, night becomes day.
Right.
That's one thing. Yeah,
Okay.
2, I think when we resist something, there's this line that Christ said, right? You're a good Baptist, you probably know. Resist not evil. Because if you
Oh,
resist it,
yeah.
you have a tendency to become that which you hate. And what I see
Wow.
in our political spectrum is exactly that. We have to be really careful about our hatred of the
Right.
whatever the other is,
Right. Right. Oh,
because we're
yeah.
apt to actually become demonic about it, and maybe
Right.
daemonic, the creative daemon. I don't know. I could go on and on. I often do.
Oh, I think that's fascinating.
I don't
Yeah.
know though, that my mantra is I don't know. I had this friend in recovery who was in the Colonial Williamsburg Fife and Drum Corps with me. This is our alumni hat. And he, got sober, let's see, I'm not gonna be able to do the math, but in 2016, he was having his 27th anniversary. And the guys who were tight with him, I hadn't seen him in years, but I went down to his anniversary. It's the first time I'd seen him in ages, maybe since high school. No, probably I saw him in 2003 as well. And he's kind of a jerk. But he his friends call him "I don't know, man," like it's a superpower. I just know how things seem to me. I'll share my perspective with you.
Okay.
I don't know, but this is my perspective. This is how it seems. What do you think? And then we can come to some sort of, like, picture of what we believe to be true, but even then, we should probably say,
That
the way it seems
Yeah,
to us, but maybe there's another perspective, and I can listen to another person's perspective, and that's what I think is the genius of good meetings, is you
yeah.
listen to a lot of different perspectives, and you might pick up something that somebody's laying down that might be useful.
You know,
Everything's
that's
sitting out on the floor, to for
that
our
that
protection.
that is what, my religious studies professor, Mr. Tyson,
Mhm.
that was his thing. I don't know. I mean, when I said, "What is religious studies?" I don't know.
Maybe that's where I wanted to go when you said that, because that did sort of light me up inside a little bit. And but I guess that's the question I like to ask people too. What really lights us up inside? You've been through a lot in the
Yeah,
fairly short life now. I think we're fairly young still,
we are pretty young,
being
yeah.
63 model. You're a late 63 model. But what's lighting you up inside on a daily basis? It gets you up and gets you excited about living and life.
Oh, wow, and that's a hard question because sometimes I'm not excited.
Me too. I
Uh,
actually
uh
wake up sometimes and all I can do is think, "Okay, I'm not gonna commit suicide today."
right, and seriously, yeah.
Right?
Well, a lot of it is my dog, Yo-Yo, who's over there. Yo-Yo.
Sweet.
And she
Unconditional
has
love those things are.
she pretty much disciplines me. She's like, it's time for us to get up now, and it's time for us to go for a walk,
Uh-huh.
and we're gonna walk around this neighborhood, and we're gonna go do we need to get more exercise, and I mean she's just very rambunctious, kind of pit bull mix 7-year-old. She is in charge of just I and also she's like, we're gonna stop and sniff up this bush and,
Mhm.
my head is full of my monkeys, and it's like, "What?" "No, why do I have to look at this bush? Because this is where our feet are," you know?
Here and now. Oh, where your feet
Right?
are.
So she's yeah, she is my savior.
Be where your feet are is such a great lesson. I had one, gosh, when was it? We were gone to the, breakfast at the zoo here. That's one reason we belong to the, Residence Associates program at a certain level was so we had breakfast at the zoo and unlimited bacon, my wife and I. But I had a flat tire on one of our cars, and I was waiting for the AAA guy to come because I can't change a tire. Not with the equipment I have in hand. I don't have the proper stuff. So somebody left a bag outside their cars. They loaded up and then they drove off. And I noticed that they had left a bag there, like a travel bag of some form, piece of luggage. So I put it back up on the porch they come out of in these little row houses I have here on S Street in DC. And there's 6 steps to a landing and then 6 more steps. And as I turn to go down those steps, I notice my feet aren't properly aligned. Being where my feet are wasn't particularly a good idea, but I went down those steps, landing on the landing on my chest. My feet
Ow.
and my knees didn't get damaged, so I must not have actually touched them. But I slid
Wow.
down on one arm down the last 6 steps. 12 steps down to humility. And being where my feet are, those
Right.
things are kind of important. Knowing what step I'm on, that's always been an important thing. So my talent for physical comedy, honestly, somebody was calling an ambulance because I really thought I'd done some serious damage in that fall. And I managed to straighten myself off, and I'd only just bruised myself pretty badly across the sternum. But other than that, where I landed on the landing, I don't know. So the dog, walking the dog, being in nature, being present in the moment, and knowing that it's a glorious moment. One of the things that's really lit me up a lot over time, in fact, the day after I had dinner with Chuck, I went and got 10 copies of this DVD. Can you see what that is?
Uh,
The Wavy Gravy Story, Saint Misbehavin'. And, there's a panel with the director, who's one of us, 41 years in. And, now, at the time, not so long, but, it was 2016, but I've been up to the Unlimited Devotion weekend they've been having as the East Coast edition of Wavy's birthday every year since. Have you ever heard of Wavy?
now
Wavy was known as Hugh Romney, and he worked with Martha Graham in improv and dance and theater and such in Boston, and then followed her to Greenwich Village in the early '60s. And around 1961, there's this kid from Minnesota came into town and needed a place to stay, so for a while, he shared a room with Hugh, and that guy's name was Bob Dylan. And
Oh, yeah, okay.
Wavy's married to the girl from the North Country from Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. There isn't a picture of Ja on this copy, but she's lovely. Oh, there she is. There's Ja.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah, so that lights me up inside a lot is just being able to move the needle a little bit for Michelle and her work in films like this one. She did another film called Cracked Up about the life of Daryl Hammond, who suffered a lot at his hands of his mother. We were talking about families and
Yeah,
relationships once.
yeah.
And in Daryl Hammond's case, he was on Saturday Night Live. Do you know the actor? Any chance?
Oh, no.
He's did Bill Clinton. He did Sean Connery on Jeopardy to Will Ferrell's Alex Trebek and things like that. He was very good at impersonations, which he learned to do, but in order to amuse his mother, he would talk.
That's cool.
Isn't it interesting? So, Cracked Up is about trauma informed care and how most of us need trauma informed care. So, I helped fund that film. When I found out what she was working on next, I said, "Well, can I help you out somehow?" Because I think that's what we need to do. How can we help each other out? I'm
Right.
mindful of the time here. We've gone almost an hour and a half. But I've really enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, but I don't wanna keep you all
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
Terrible. What kind of message do we wanna really let people know about as main takeaways? You've got a novel in progress. It's gonna be released, do you know when?
Oh, no, well, I mean, when someone buys it.
Somebody out there buy her novel so it can come
Please,
out
it's
in the
it's
public,
set in
please?
Alaska, it's great, great community, great characters. You like it.
Yeah,
Yeah. What lights me up, though, I do wanna say before we end is, actually my children. Uh,
of course.
I I just love them. They are hilarious, they're deep, they're, just yeah, and I think I have this sense of just deep responsibility. When I lived in Senegal, West Africa, there was
Yes.
no suicide, and I would ask my students, like, "Why is there no such thing as suicide?" And they said, "Oh, because people, our people need us. Our families need us." That's it.
And maybe that's why people do commit suicide. They don't feel they're needed.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting thing. This morning, I was listening to one of my philosophical things, who was Philip Mailander. Have you ever heard of Philip Mailander?
No.
I hadn't either, and there's good reason for that. He died at fairly young age, committed suicide. His philosophy basically was that and after a point, he thought he had contributed everything he had to contribute to life and the universe and everything in it, and therefore took himself out on a stack of his own books. Jumped off.
Huh.
Which is kind of a bizarre thing. That's like the opposite, the enantiodromia, the thing becoming its opposite, of the life in Senegal. And Senegal, of course, very poor country compared to here, right?
Oh, yeah.
You were
Oh,
in
yeah.
Peace Corps there for how long?
2 years.
2 years?
88 to 90, yeah.
Yeah, 88 to 90. Trying to bring myself back. That was the years of my marriage, my first one, my starter marriage. Put my wife through
Yeah.
school to get her certification to teach art, went up for my interviews at Pitt and found out she was thinking of divorcing me. She had taken a
Ah,
job like 500 miles away, and it was just before the internet, so we were basically working on long distance phone calls to keep our relationship going, and that's not enough, as it turns
yeah,
out, particularly when the ex-boyfriend from high school is willing to come back into your life, um, as was the case in hers case. We
yeah.
do have, a great responsibility. Have you seen this book yet?
No, I'm just writing all these books down.
Yeah. I'm always got books. It's crazy. One of these
Yeah.
days, I gotta give them away. Our great responsibility I pulled out because this is the first book-length thing that Alcoholics Anonymous has put out as conference-approved literature in
Huh,
30 years in 2019. They've since put out a plain language big book, but
yeah.
this one is a collection of, Bill Wilson's General Service Conference talks from 1951 to 1970. And, when everything my father was raised as a historian, as I mentioned, and if it's printed, it's suspect, was the long and short of his training. Why would they publish this? Well, maybe it's because we don't know what our great responsibility is.
Yeah.
Remember,
Yeah.
I get the impression that it's kinda like dwindling, that where our fellowship shrinks over time. I'm sure there's ebb and flow, but, when you look at the statistics, they say that there's about 2,000,000 members. I've been saying that since 1976. I think we've got a message that can save people's lives and doesn't require much. It doesn't cost anything. I think sometimes people feel like, "Oh, if I'm not paying a lot of money, it can't be really valuable." But then again, there's this guy around here, got sober December 7th again, December 7th, who's back again, 1976, and he's a psychiatrist, emergency medical physician, trained in that initially in the Navy, and then he moved up to rank of captain as a psychiatrist at the Naval Hospital Bethesda, head of that. He says, 500,000 years ago or so, or 100,000 years ago, if you want, we got together in little bands of 10, 20, 50 adults and lots of children and figured out how to get breakfast rather than be breakfast.
Right.
Still, just because we've invented condos does not mean that need has gone away. So getting the hand extended, it was really drilled into me in Pittsburgh in the '90s, and, getting my hand extended these days is very important to me. I try to be out and among people, but I try also to keep that feeling of, like, live and let live. Do whatever you want. Total
Right.
freedom. I think you were talking about that freedom too in your, coming up
Oh,
through college,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
and living in that freedom and realizing that freedom's accessible whenever we want it. There are very few people pointing guns at my head and making me do anything.
Right.
If they were to do it, I might pull the trigger for them while flipping them off. That's
Right.
what to do. That's, like, also part of our personality, I think, if you're an addict, alcoholic type. We may be creative and all of that, but somebody tell us what to do, I'll do the
Right.
opposite.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Just to prove the
Oh,
point.
yeah.
Oh,
Right.
well, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Gosh,
I've
thank you.
gone
This was just
places
so much fun, Hal.
I've gone places I wouldn't feel comfortable going with anybody else. I didn't even know you were one of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're both in 63, so I think that's fantastic. We gotta keep
Right.
going. Keep breathing as long as possible.
Thank you. I will try, and you too.
And, that dog probably wants to walk by now, right?
It's time it's time for our big run. Yeah, she's
What's
been
her name?
patient. Yo-yo.
Right,
Yo.
Yo-Yo. You told me at the beginning, and I forgot already.
Hey, Yo-Yo. Look over here. No? Say hi.
Fine.
What's going on?
You ready?
Ready to go? Go for a walk? Oop.
Oh, yeah. Now that lit her up inside,
Oh,
I can
yeah,
see
that's
that.
what lights
Thank you
you up.
again.
Let's go outside.
I'll let you go.
Alright, thank you,
Really
Hal.
enjoyed it. We'll do it again sometime if you're willing.
Yes, I would love to. Think I learned a lot.
And I'd love to learn more and see your book actually get somebody interested.
Yeah, me
So,
too.
push that out there. See you
Okay,
later.
thanks. Bye-bye.